Hello, I want to welcome all of you to the Mentorship Monday. So, I will just say I'm on vacation again. We're here in the summer, so I'm doing everything that I can to put as much time in before school starts and just spending some time at home. So, you're actually in my old bedroom when I was a child living and growing up in Northern California. And so it's now my dad's office because once I finished school, I got kicked out and it was transitioned into this. So I'm happy to be here with you today. My name's Cory Fisk. I'm with Construction Management Online. And even on vacation, there's still sometimes a little bit of work that you have to do here and there. So we're going to start off with our first question. Again, I'm going to be a little bit informal about this and not have your slides ready for you today, but we're going to have some fun anyways. I had a LinkedIn post that went out yesterday. It went out Friday. And in that post, it generated quite a discussion. And I didn't really mean for it to. I was just trying to provide simplicity in clarity. And what that was really explaining that as a construction manager, we need to stay in our own lane. So when you're looking at understanding your role and responsibilities as a construction manager, it needs to be very clear that there are a lot of factors that can change that and make that happen. And so what I want to be able to explain is what I meant by stay in your lane. Now, construction manager means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You can have a construction manager for a contractor, for an architect. When I'm talking about a construction manager, it's in reference to what we would call an agency CM, which is typically someone who's representing the best interest of someone who has hired someone to represent them in the construction process. Now, we all know that the more construction experience you have, the better you're going to be at your job. But the problem with that is that we can never have all the experience we need to face a lot of the complexities that come up in construction management. These projects that we're dealing with are a new beast every day, and there are new things coming in like technology or new advances that we need to recognize that are going to change the way that we've been doing things old school in a lot of the situations. But when we're really trying to understand the inner core construction team, we're trying to know what every person's role and responsibility is so that there reduces the amount of conflict in the relationships that occur in that inner core team, and that we understand accountability and the potential for risk and liability when you step outside of that lane. Now, one individual said, well, a construction manager covers all lanes. And I would say that we all do when right? You're sometimes in the fast lane, you're sometimes in the slow lane, and you are moving across lanes in order to be able to get where you need to go. But there is a lot to be said for staying in the lane that is most appropriate for you and where you should be. So in my opinion, construction management lane is going to be the lane of facilitation. We are there to know where to find the answers. We are not responsible for knowing all of the answers. And I think sometimes this gets put out of context because we are the go-to person on a job site. And the reason that we're the go-to is because all information should be running through us, and we should have an understanding of where to go and how to find that information from the appropriate expert. And so, as I said, as a contractor, you're building it. As an owner, you're paying for it. As an inspector, you're inspecting it. As an architect, you're designing it. So as a construction manager, you're managing it. You're managing the process of the construction process. And so I just want this point to really be understood, that if your length of years in the construction industry has provided expertise that allow you to know and understand different lanes, then giving that information is not only important, but critical in you providing those lessons learned and those understandings that you bring from your experience of other jobs. The people in the room can't solve a problem that they've never been faced with before and know that the resolution that they've come up with is the right answer if they've never had to do it. So, of course, your expertise are going to be critical in being able to establish success for this particular project. And so, with that and that understanding, there are going to be times that your expertise and knowledge allow you to be able to participate in the conversation of what should be done in order to make this project more successful. Where you want to be careful is providing direction and telling someone that they have to do it the way that you tell them they have to do it. This is important in all aspects of the construction industry, not just construction management. How one person does something does not have to be the same way another person does something to end up with the same result. And so trying to control the means and methods of how someone plans on getting to the completion of a successful deliverable is really up to that person. So as a construction manager, you're managing the process, and the expertise of the individuals in each of their paths, designer, builder, inspector, need to be respected. And as a construction manager, it's your job to make sure that they do their job. So with that, I will say that it was quite a great conversation, very respectful, and I appreciate all of the input. And of course, the different perspectives are welcomed, and everyone was able to contribute a comprehension of why they thought the way that they did. And that's what creates beautiful uniqueness in all of us in the construction industry, because we can pick and choose what fits with our particular style and move on from there. So to be a construction manager, stay in your lane, make sure that you're managing the process, facilitating information, and leaning on the expertise of your team members and those that are contractually responsible to accept the risk and liability associated with the scope of work that they're doing. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. The next question that we're going to go into is about contracts. So I just finished a course that we were working on this morning with a company, and their desire was to have a better understanding of contracts, not just for the administrative side, for the site superintendents to also recognize the importance of them knowing what is in the contract. So I liken a contract to your birth certificate. Your birth certificate establishes your identity and is the foundation for starting the rest of your life. This is what a contract does for a construction project. Now, one of the points brought up by the superintendent is, how long does it take to negotiate a contract? Who has say in what gets to be changed in a contract? Because when I'm out on the job site, I see things all the time that shouldn't be in the contract. And so my question obviously was, who have you told about that? Because by the time we sign a contract, it's a little late in the process. And so we want to be able to have that kind of input from our site supers early on in the contract development. So if we can get those points of view from them of things that go wrong out on the job site that we can have manipulated or changed in the contract before it's signed, then we're going to have a powerful document to work from the foundation of our construction project. So it's just as important for our site superintendents to know how and what is in those construction contracts. There's also an understanding that once the contract's signed, you just file it and it's there. So if anybody disputes whether or not they're in a contractual relationship in this particular construction project, then all you have to do is see the signature on the contract. Well, it's not a one and done. You need to refer to that contract throughout the entire process of the construction project. And I would say you're looking at that contract the entire time that you're in the development of the pre-design phase of that contract, so that you're using consistency for all of the other documents that are going to be attributed to the success of this project. So when you're looking at the advertisement for the bid that's going out, you're going to refer to the scope of work found on the contract. When you're talking about progress reports, you're going to refer to the requirements in the contract of how a progress report needs to be established and structured. You're going to be using that contract to be able to provide consistency of all of the other documents that you're going to be using in your project, and then also offer fluidity throughout the entire project. Your contract does have to have some very important details. First and foremost, knowing what type of contract. The type of contract is going to be in reference to the type of project. So, is it a complex project? Is it a simple project? Is it a federal, state, regional project, or private project? Is it industrial, commercial, residential, transportation? What kind of project are you looking at in order to understand the necessity of complexity that needs to be included for coverage and protection of the contract? Is it a formal or informal contract? Now, I would argue, because I came from Department of Corrections work starting as a 20-year-old, and know that if it is not in writing, it does not exist. So even informal contracts that have a handshake and a witness, I would say still require an email follow-up that is making sure that everything is documented at some point in time. But a written contract is going to be a more formal contract that is hopefully going to identify some of those key components necessary to make it a legally binding contract. An informal contract can also be legally binding so long as you do have a witness, you have a meeting of the minds, everyone's on the same page, and you have an acceptance of the agreement that's being made for trade of services. But when we're looking at it, I would just say, for what we're talking about, construction managers, you go with the written formal contract. And that's going to have a scope of work that is going to identify the breadth of this entire project. You're going to have an offer for an amount or services that are going to be traded. You're going to have a time frame and a duration. You want to have terms and conditions that have expectations and boundaries for your project. You're also going to include some type of legal negotiation that can happen just in case things go sideways. And then you're going to have acceptance of that contract. Now, here's one point that I want to bring out, that when you're looking at acceptance, that needs to be of a signature of an authoritative person who has permission to be signing that contract. We also want to have something that has liability and protection provisions in it, which is going to cover any insurance requirements. And then as a construction manager, we're going to be looking at those for whether or not they're current, if they extend the entire duration of the project. Sometimes we have 1 year, 2-year projects that we need to make sure that we have things in place that remind us that we need to look at any expirations that might be happening with any documents that have been required by the contract. So with that, I would say that really what answers that question, just knowing and understanding that your contract is what you are establishing that construction project base on. So it never hurts anyone to be too complete with a contract. We want to try to remove as much ambiguity as we can and make it as clear and direct as possible. So that's what we're going to do when we're working with contracts. And then the last thing here on Mentorship Monday that I'm going to be talking with you about is going to be transition rungs on a ladder. So, this is probably the most difficult thing that I've found in the construction industry. A lot of people like to believe that the construction industry is just unique in the way that it's male majority and that it has different levels of individuals that are working in it. And there are a lot of other industries that are similar in the structure of how they work by having an entry level or low education entry into their industry and then being able to promote upward into an executive position. I think the difference is with construction is the physicality that comes in to that structure and the work that a lot of us do at the entry level that causes physical strain and stress that is the motivator for us to want to move into different positions that maybe normally our skill sets would not have led us to because it's not as comfortable for us to be in a management position or an administrative type of position. And so we got into the physicality of construction because either that was what we thought was the only thing available to us, or because we really enjoyed it and we loved working with dad in the garage or working with mom in the garden, or that we just really understood through the mentorship of a parent or an outside influence of the amazing opportunities in the construction industry of being able to build big, beautiful things and contribute to the success of our world. So, regardless of why you got into construction, there is sometimes this feeling that we always need to be advancing, and this comes from our behavior and our human operating system, which is built to have challenges in place that encourage us for continued growth. If you're not growing, you're dying, you know? So we want always to be growing. And sometimes our assumption is that that growth has to take place in a certain direction because that's what society has told us. And so, what I want you to understand is that's not true. So, our growth in a particular pathway is going to be dependent on what's right for us. So, you could be an entry level laborer and choose that you really like that and that you can continue growth in being a better and better laborer and labor foreman and labor lead through that pathway process. It's when you want to move to the next level where the challenges really start hitting in. So I will just say that I found those transitions to be really hard a lot of times because of the individuals who were already on that rung of the ladder. So when I started as a laborer, I, worked very hard. As a matter of fact, as a woman, usually 2 to 3 times harder and faster than the gentleman I was working with because they were physically more capable of doing more in a short period of time. I usually got credited with coming up with ideas that made my job easier, like grabbing the forklift and moving the pile of timber instead of carrying each one over to the new location. But nonetheless, I had to work really hard. So that motivated me to want to promote to the next position, which was the equipment operator. And so when I did that, I was there and it was, well, you don't have any experience. You've not, trained on this. You haven't done this. Well, they didn't know. I mean, my dad was an equipment operator. I've been running scrapers and the blade and a backhoe since I was 12. But the assumption was that I didn't know what I was doing. And so in that moment, there's a lack of confidence in yourself because you're believing what these people are saying. And so then you start gaining confidence and you start showing them within the first, month or 2 months that you can do what you're going to do. And then you break through that barrier and you're able to continue on your path of growth. But the hardest transition was moving from the site into the office. And just the feeling of the eyes of me not belonging. I had a tendency, maybe, to still wear some of the clothes that I wore when I was out in the field. So I would wear my boots and jeans and t-shirt, and not necessarily come with cute little slip-on shoes and slacks and a nice blouse. I mean, I was on a construction site was how I looked at it. And it made it easy for me to be able to go out on the job site anytime I needed to or what have you. But because of some of my own insecurities of being bullied and always kind of having conflict and issues with other women, working in the office was a challenge. And it was something that I needed to recognize and understand what I was good at so that I could focus on the things that I struggled at a little bit. Fortunately for me, I had some amazing male mentors that were very willing to be able to give education and support for when I had to do things. And so for me personally, and being an introvert, it was really easy just to cut off those that I didn't feel were helping instead of learning how to work with them, which was a mistake on my part and something that I continue to try to grow in and always be trying to work and understand why certain people do certain things. But also being able to release that. If it is something that doesn't feel good and something that's holding me back, I want to stay focused on what's positive and what I can do in order to be able to continue my personal growth and my professional growth. And that was through finding amazing mentors that could provide me with that support in understanding what my job duties needed to be and how I needed to interact in order to be able to continue promoting into an assistant project management and then into a construction manager position. So just keep your head up, keep your chin up. Know that you're going to go through some rough spots. It's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always challenges, and those challenges are going to come concurrently to a bunch of fires that are going to be going on your job site. But just recognize that the tighter that you manage a project, the more that you're focused on what needs to happen early on in the project will free up time for you to be able to maintain focus on keeping your project running smoothly. So as always, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and for you to be showing up as a student for the Monday mentorship. Also, make sure that you check out Construction Management Online and that we have a YouTube channel for you now to be able to look at some of those short videos to help you through some of your situational things that you're dealing with out on the job site. So I will see you next Monday. Thanks for being here.